Hi everyone, I'm Kaylee, and today I'm going to be talking about blindness in middle grade literature. The topic I chose and studied is blindness in middle grade literature, and I chose this because I believe that it is important for literature scholars like ourselves to be educated on the intentional choice for writing books and/or creating characters who are blind. Blindness is an important part of diversity in literature and is often written to inform a reader about blindness or to teach a lesson about navigating life or coping with a visual impairment such as blindness. I think that it is important to find and to read books about blindness and with blind characters that does not just inform and teach us a lesson about blindness. I think covering aspects of blindness in middle grade literature through studies and also different books will show us all how to receive new information about blindness and to help us to be more intentional when choosing different books with blind characters, and talking about the concept under the scope of diversity in literature more appropriately. So today I'm going to be covering these aspects while discussing 3 books that all have blind characters, and also 3 scholarly articles that each take a different approach to books about blindness, such as different ways blindness or blind characters are portrayed, the stereotypes of bias and the disability of blindness under the umbrella of diversity in literature, and a literature approach from a person who is blind and their personal experiences and advocacy for blindness and people who are blind when approaching literature. I'm also going to address the misconceptions of blindness in middle grade literature, how to talk about blindness in middle grade literature, the importance of characters who are blind in middle grade literature under the umbrella of diversity, and comparing literature of characters who are blind. I'm also going to be talking about more TCP and less TCP specifically for characters with blindness in middle grade literature, as this is important to know how to look for the typical case prototypes or less typical case prototypes for books about blindness in middle grade literature, because I believe all of these concepts will better help us to approach blindness in literature. The first article I'm going to be talking about is A Blind Child's View of Children's Literature. As a blind child, Craig Warner would read books in Braille, but there were no images in Braille. The words alone from these books were not enough to provide an image in his mind. People who would read books to him did not describe illustrations in the books that were able to provide an image in his mind. Not because they didn't know how to, but because the books didn't portray words that were strong enough to provide an imagery for him. As an adult now, he is teaching children's literature and understands the real meaning behind teaching and expressing word choices of images for children who are blind. Like himself and other blind people, he advocates that words in a book can be used to create an image of one's imagination, but not all words in a book are enough to create the visual connotations. As a blind person, he has never seen color, so in a book that uses the context of color, it is harder for him to understand and to know how to create that image along with various other examples. Literature should be held to a vocal utterance and not just written words to create unknowing visuals of words themselves. As a blind person, he emphasizes the importance of books being able to be understood upon experiences and emotions of people with blindness. The second source I'm going to be talking about is Blindness and Intimacy in Early 20th Century Literature. Maren Linnet addresses how different types of literature portray blindness and blind characters. Blindness is placed in the context of visual measures such as something life-ruining, an exploration of life with blindness, and etc. Associating blindness is often done without proper knowledge and implies that it best comes through vision. Blindness is often connected to the usage of other senses and self-consciousness in literature. Although the literature is detailed in this press the importance of sense substitution for blind characters, blindness is viewed as the intimacy to all other senses, such as hearing and touch. Disabled bodies have bent rules of representation of blindness, explorations, and possibilities of consciousness in literature. The next source I'm going to be talking about is disability bias in children's literature. Ellen Rubin addresses disability in children's literature. There are vast amounts of different stereotypes in literature, such as how a person with a disability is portrayed. Ellen Rubin breaks down different disabilities seen in literature and how those are created to reflect different biases. There are books that are made or written to help a blind person with the usage of mobility aid, and others that are written in a less positive light about blindness, personalities, and lifestyles that are not represented in the most positive light for characters of blindness. Their saddened guilt and unprocessed love for the loss of their visions. The book I'm going to be talking about, the first one, is Tangerine. It's a book written about a young boy named Paul Fisher. Paul became blind from a solar eclipse viewing without the proper sun protection glasses. Paul is aware of the accident and learns he's unaware of the accident and learns the reason he became blind from his parental figures. As a result of this accident, Paul is now legally blind and wears thick glasses. Although Paul is blind, he can see things that no one else can, such as the true nature of his brother. Paul and his family are originally from Texas but moved to Florida, where Paul attends a new school and tries out for a soccer team. Paul is told that because of his visual impairments, he is unable to be on the team, and he blames his mom for informing the new school attendant about it. So in this book specifically, this one would go alongside the blindness and intimacy in early 20th century literature, because it talks about how blindness is often connected to the usage of other senses and self-consciousness in literature. So for the book Tangerine specifically, it talks about how he sees a world from beyond glasses so thick that he looks bug-eyed. But he's not so blind that he can't see there are some very unusual things about his family's new home and his brother. So this goes with that article because he uses his other senses far beyond his sight and how he navigates life with his blindness. The next article I'm going to be talking about is Blindsided. It's a book written about a 14-year-old girl named Natalie who faces unexpected and devastating news at an eye doctor appointment. Natalie is given the news that in just a few short months, she will lose her vision as a result of her diagnosis of glaucoma. Natalie is forced with leaving her school and family to attend a school for the blind to learn Braille and how to use a cane. At first, Natalie is super resistant to the school and what it can teach her. Through this process, Natalie is hoping for a miracle to save her sight, but her vision does not return and she has to learn to embrace and navigate her life with the new skills she has learned in school. This book is about Natalie, who is slowly losing her eyesight. When she was 8, she had stumbled and walked into things, and she was born without auresis, is the part that controls the light allowed into the eyesight. So a few weeks before school started, she received the news from her regular follow-up doctor's appointment that she had glaucoma, and she was sent to a blind school in Baltimore. She navigates her life and considers herself different than everyone else. After all, she can still see, and some new kids at school require her a lot more help, but she's resistant to the school and what it wants to teach her. She refuses to use a cane, and she can't tell the difference in the Braille dots. She finds a Brailler machine, but it's hard to use. Natalie has prayed that this would never happen, and it actually occurs. She wakes up one morning and is literally unable to see. Blindsided is a summary of this, is that she follows her disability, and her father is in denial of her vision loss, as well as Natalie is, with not wanting to go to a new school, not wanting to learn what the school is going to teach her, and not going to want to accept that she has to use a cane and learn things in Braille. So this is showing you that the character Natalie, who experiences this blindness from glaucoma, that she doesn't stop living. She continues living, and she is just forced to develop different priorities and strengths through all of this. And then Just Maria is another book that I'm going to talk about. It's a book written about a 6th grade girl who is blind. Her name is Maria. She does all she can to be normal and nothing more. Maria believes that being normal is hard for her because she has to use a cane, a braille book, and has porcelain eyes. Despite this, she has taken on a series of public challenges by her friend JJ. Her confidence has grown in helping in ways like never before. She uses all of her resources to the best of her ability, and she solves a case with her friend. The resources being her brain and cane is what she uses to figure out how to navigate her life with the blindness. And she doesn't hold back from that. So Maria and JJ, her best friend, they go on an adventure, and Maria, although she is blind, she's so much more than her blindness. She's a person who is showing frustration, friendship challenges, and her independence. So besides her being a blind 6th grade character, she follows everything with her heart, her compassion for her blindness, and it guides her to embrace her friendship with a character in the book, despite what her peers think of her. And her friend JJ just pushes her to do more and to challenge her to be the best person that she can be. So that book is about that. And then these also connect to the articles of the blind view of children's literature. So providing those kinds of images in a book and those kinds of characters that have the strength and have the ability to process their emotions and to process their strengths and weaknesses when it comes to either a diagnosis of blindness or just the overall aspect of blindness or being blind. And today I'm also going to be talking about the misconceptions of blindness in middle grade literature. So a lot of the misconceptions are characters who are blind see nothing whatsoever, which is not true, because in the book, Tangerine, he is able to see, and not see, but he is able to use his other senses, and he's able to figure out things about like his new town and his hometown where he came from and all of his siblings. He's able to figure out everything using his other senses besides his sight. Another misconception is characters who are blind have no sense of direction, which is again proven untrue. In the book Blindsided, although her diagnosis, she still uses her strengths and her abilities that she still has to navigate her new life and to move to a new school and to leave her family and to go through all of that. So they do have a sense of direction. And all of the characters who are blind have heightened senses. That is not always true in every single book. And then all characters have another source of help or reliance. While that is true to a standard of the books that I've chosen, not all books of blindness or characters that are blind do they have the resources or options to be motivated or to have help or reliance of either a diagnosis or a character who is blind. I'm also going to talk about how to talk about blindness in middle grade literature. I think that is super important when addressing a book about blindness or a book that has a character who is blind. So you always want to use people first language. You never want to say a person who is blind. You always want to put like the name and then with blindness or blind. You want to focus more on the character as a whole rather than the disability of blindness. So that goes in with all of the books that I had chosen. So Maria is using her intelligence. She's resolving things with her mind and her heart and her bravery. In the book Blindsided, Natalie, although is given bad news and she isn't very open to moving and leaving her family and going to a new school and learning Braille and using a cane and all those things, she does come around to the idea of that. And her family, although are there to help her, it is still harder for her, but she is portrayed as a character who has willingness and who is excited at one point in the end of the book, and she is striving to reach that end goal. So that is super important for her, because not a lot of times do you see that in a book where a character is not just defined by that one disability, and in this case, blindness. And the importance of blindness is that when you are focusing on the characters themselves, it's a lot more of a like softer read, or a kind of clearer understanding of who the character is supposed to be, and not just their character who is blind. So also, when comparing literature of characters who are blind, having a huge or larger sample of blind characters will help us more accurately portray the disability. So if we have the book like Tangerine, and how the disability of blindness is portrayed from an accident, whether it be from an accident, or it be from a diagnosis, or it be from being born blind. All of that is important to have multiple books, and not just comparing the characters and all of that as one group, because if you have more, it's easier to kind of see what is typical and how the disability of blindness is being portrayed. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is a typical case prototype to a less typical case prototype, specifically for characters with blindness in middle grade literature. So a typical case prototype would be that the character with blindness is unable to be independent. They are extremely vulnerable in any kind of situation. They're foolish and helplessness from being blind or being unable to see. They're clumsy. The same kind of goes in hand with foolish and helplessness. They're an object of comedy, kind of like made to be a joke, made to be kind of this in between of like knowing and not knowing, and then senseless. And then a example of less TCP would be that they're confident and secure, that although they have blindness or are blind, that they are independent. They're capable of still doing things for themselves and not having 100% reliance on someone else. They are brave, perseverant. Nothing is going to stop them. They're going to continue and continue until they've reached their initial goal or acceptance of being blind with or having blindness. And then they're romantically inclined. So they're just there with all of themselves, and the fact of being blind or having a diagnosis of blindness is not going to stop them. So for this, I wanted to talk about for TCP that it's not just talking about the characters themselves, it's also the book and how the character is portrayed, kind of like talking about the character as a whole. So for the book Tangerine, I would say it would be kind of less TCP, because he is confident, although he moved to a new school and left his hometown and all of the things, that at one point his mom tells the new school administration about his visual impairment or of being blind, and he gets mad at his mom and like takes that out on her and all of that. And also he struggles to find that his blindness is keeping him back from something that he still wants to do, and he is capable of that. So he is made to be a character that although his mom has told him that and he is not able to make the soccer team, that he still makes it, and that he makes all these friends and he wins a soccer game and all that. So he's made to be brave and capable and independent and extremely confident about being blind and the things that he can do while being a blind character. And then Blindsided is kind of the same thing. I feel like it would be a less typical case prototype because it's not as much talking about the diagnosis of glaucoma itself, but it's putting Natalie into a situation where she's processing all of this. And although that she's kind of standoffish from her diagnosis and doesn't want to learn to navigate her new life and all of that, she is still brave and independent and capable. And she does learn how to use a cane and how to read Braille. And then in the book Just Maria, Maria does everything that she can to be independent and to kind of be on her own and to kind of figure things out. And especially with JJ pushing that on her and, challenging her to be herself and to try all of these things that would make her feel normal. She's willing to do those things. And I feel like she is capable and brave, and she really does try to hold a sense of confidence in her ability to do all of these things despite her being blind. So I think that this is something for blindness and middle grade literature that is very important, and I think that all of this will help all of us in one way or another to either find books about blindness and middle grade literature, or to talk about them in a way that is still acknowledging the disability and is not taking away from that, but also to our understanding of what kind of stereotypes and what kind of bias are in different books. Thank you.